Hey guys, welcome to the channel. In this new series we'll take a look at a virtual PPL syllabus, so you can earn your virtual flying wings. At the start this will be more aimed at beginners, as it will go through all the basics of the syllabus, and then as we progress we'll get into more complex areas, so hopefully it'll suit everybody. I'm by no means a flying instructor. I do hold a PPL in the UK, but I cannot instruct, so please do not use any of this in real life. This is purely for sim purposes only. But inside the aircraft we'll go through our first part of the syllabus, which is our cockpit layout and instrumentation and how it all works. So the first instrument we'll go through is our ASI, our airspeed indicator, and we have all our speeds around the outside. The green arc is your normal operating speed area. The white arc is your flaps speed, so you can deploy flaps at any point during the white arc, but you should never exceed here. This is the max speed for your flaps. At the end of the white arc you have a VSO, which is your stall speed with flaps, and then at the end of the green arc you have VS1, which is your stall speed clean, so no flaps. Where green meets yellow is VNO, and when you enter this area here, the yellow arc, you should proceed with caution, and it shouldn't be done in turbulence or anything like that. It needs to be still air, otherwise you could damage the aircraft. VNE is here, so you should never exceed that speed, and if you did, that could cause structural damage to the aircraft. Just moving on to the right, we'll go down a little bit. This is our suction gauge, so normal operating area is in the green section here for this aircraft, and this is the suction vacuum system that's driven off the engine, and that drives things like the gyro for our artificial horizon. So moving on to the artificial horizon, on a very basic level, you have your white line across here, and that indicates the horizon. The blue area is sky, brown area is land. Where you're pointing is if you're going to the sky or going towards the ground sort of thing in terms of pitch. But you have varying degrees of bank, so this will be 0, 10, 20, 30, and then you have 60 degrees here. Sometimes they have a little marker for 45. In terms of pitch, you have your varying degrees of pitch, so 5, 10, 15, 20, and then the same in reverse for the if you're descending or pointing the aircraft down towards ground. You have a simple clock. Some aircraft have timers. If they don't have it here, sometimes they have it on the yoke. This aircraft doesn't. Very basic. Then we have our altimeter. It works a bit like a clock if you're not familiar. Large hand shows hundreds of feet. Small hand shows thousands of feet. And then the very thin one with a triangle on it shows tens of thousands of feet. So right now that's showing, if we just move it up, 100 feet. And then if this was to go all the way around and this was pointing at 1, that'd be 1,000 feet, provided that was at 0. Hopefully that makes sense. Then we have our CDI, our course deviation indicator. This is for use with VORs, ILSs, that sort of thing. This is our OBS knob, and this is how we adjust what radial we'd like to track to or from. Sorry, just go back to the altimeter. This is how you adjust it, if I didn't go through that. You have millibars and inches of mercury, depending on what you prefer or what you're used to. But back to the CDI. CDI 1 is linked up with nav 1, CDI 2 linked up with nav 2. Then we have our VSI, our vertical speed indicator. As it says there, it's times by 100 feet per minute, so that would be 500, 1,000, 1,500 feet per minute, for example. Anything above is 0, so following this direction is positive. Anything here is negative. That's your rate of climb. Then we have our directional indicator, our heading indicator, and firstly we need to sync this up with our compass before we can use it, and we'd have to do it continuously through flight to make sure. But that's where you'd get your heading from, and you can bug it, usually with some aircraft, but not in this one. Then we have our turn coordinator. This is electrically driven, so it's separate from the vacuum system. So if you were to have a vacuum system failure, you do have a redundancy in terms of this, and using other instruments you can work out if you're straight and level. But again, it's quite simple. White lines here indicate level flight. If your wing is lined up with here, you are in a 2-minute coordinated turn, provided the ball is center, as it is here. This does not provide any pitch information. Move over to our radio stack. We have COM1, NAV1, COM2, NAV2. We'll go through that a bit more detail later on. Then we have our RPM gauge for our engine. Normal operating area is the green area here, and we should not exceed the red line. Then we have our ADF, and that's linked up to our ADF box here. Most people like to keep it at north. I do when I'm flying. And then we have our amp meter. Anything above 0 is positive charge, anything below 0 is negative charge. Moving down, we have various circuit breakers. They should all be in, unless there's a good reason why it should be out. Cabin heat. It's just for hot air for demisting and heat. This is cool air from outside. Our flaps and the indicator. Our mixture. In is rich. Out is lean. Throttle. Out is idle. In is full. And then carb heat for the engine is out for on, in for off. Our oil pressure gauge, we'd want to be in the green zone. Oil temp in the green. And then we have our fuel gauges for left and right. Parking brake, out is on, in is off. Primer is in. Standard. To operate, you pull it out and push it in. Our master switches, alternator and battery. Then we have our ignition, so off, right magneto, left magneto, both magnetos, and start. That's just another light switch for the glare shield, so this area. Then we have a cabin light, pitot, heat, a nav light, strobe light, beacon light, taxi, and landing. Then we have our elevator trim indicator and the actual wheel. Pulling it all the way up would give you nose down, pulling it down gives you nose up. And that's about it in terms of this aircraft. It's nice and basic. We do have our fuel selected down here, off and on. But the next step in our PPL syllabus, or virtual syllabus, sorry, is we will start the engine and go ahead with our warm-up checks and power checks. So to start this aircraft, we need to do our pre-engine start. And we will check that the doors are closed. Our parking brake is on. Our fuel selector is on. Circuit breakers are all in. Radios and avionics are all off. And then we can move to starting the engine. So throttle goes to 1/4 inch, mixture goes fully rich. Master switch we can turn on, so we turn on the battery one. We'll turn our nav and beacon on. That just indicates to people on the airfield that we are live. Then we shout out window, clear prop for anybody that's hiding around the engine. You can give the engine a couple of primes if it's cold. And then we'd operate the starter. So we go past right magneto, left magneto, both, all the way to start. Once you started, change it back to both. And the first crucial checks we need to make are that the engine has started properly. So we turn our alternator on, check that the starter warning light is out, that we've got positive oil pressure, and that our oil temperature is coming up, which it will do. but we'll keep an eye on it anyway as part of further checks. And we've got suction registering. So we'll just go through our after engine start checklist to make sure we've done everything properly. So RPM set to 1200, that's close enough. Start warning light is out. Oil pressure is within limits. Ammeter is indicating a charge. Mags, we can check our mags, so go to left and then right, so no cut. Back to both. Flaps, we check that they're up, and then we can check that they're in symmetry, so look out the windows, make sure that they are operating as they should. Which they are, and we'll just bring them all back up. So we have 0 degrees indicating, and we have 0 degrees on the wings. Okay, so next step would be to check our engine. So we do what's called a power check. Depending on where you are in the world, what airfield. Normally you do this at holding points for the runway, or you do it over in the corner of your apron, depending on the airfield you're at and the normal operating procedures there. But for the purpose of this, we'll just do it where we are now. So our location is good, we're not obstructing anybody, we're not going to cause anybody any harm. Our park and brake is set. Our RPM can go up to 1700 in this aircraft for the power check. Then we check our T's and P's, the temperatures and pressures. Our oil pressure is in the green, and our oil temperature is slowly moving and coming up. We'll check our carb heat. Pull it out, we should see a bit of a drop, and we should hear it too, which we do. Back to cold, RPM rises, and the pitch of the engine rises too. Then we can check our mags, so we'll check left mag. We should see a drop of no more than 125 RPM. Back to both. Let it stabilize. Go back to right magneto and check the same again. And then you want no more than 50 RPM difference between the two. And then ensure you put it back to both. We've got suction registering in the green zone. Ammeter is indicating a positive charge. And then we'll just check the idle, so bring the throttle all the way back. And we're looking for around 600, we're just looking for that it idles properly. So we're about 800 there, that's fine, and then we'll just return it back to 1200. Lastly, we'll go through our shutdown procedure on the checklist. We'll check that our parking brake is on, our taxi light is off, which it already is. Our radios and avionics can go off. It doesn't have a separate radio avionics switch, so we need to do it manually on each, like so. Then we can check that our beacon is still on. We can turn our nav off. We leave our beacon on so that other people still know that we're a live aircraft. And we'll check our mags for a dead cut. So we'll go to left, back to both, right, and back to both. Throttle, wheel close, and then mixture to idle cut off. We'll wait for the engine to stop completely. And once it has, we can turn off the ignition, and then we can turn off our master switches. Once we've done that, we can then turn off our beacon. And that's it for episode 1, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you wish to see more in the series, please hit subscribe. Thank you very much for watching.